My name is Mesha Kodiko, a teacher of biology. Welcome to our today's lesson where we're going to talk about the neurons. In the past, we have been seeing what is a response, and we know that a response is defined as the ability of an organism to detect and respond appropriately to the changes in their immediate environment. So these changes here are detected, or rather interpreted, by the part of the body that is called the central nervous system that is found in the brain. When a stimulus is maybe detected by an organism, then the information has to be sent to the central nervous system for interpretation so that an appropriate action is taken. So for that reason, the basic unit of the central nervous system, the CNS, is what we call the neurons. So a neuron is therefore defined as a basic unit of the central nervous system. We have three types of neurons. One, we have a neuron that is called a sensory neuron. Just as the name suggests, it is found in the sense organs like the skin. Then we have another one called the motor neuron. The motor neuron is now found at the effector organs. The effector organs are things like muscles that detect changes and then they act appropriately. We have another type of neuron that is called the relay neuron. The relay neuron, just as the name suggests, it relays the information between the two, that is sensory and motor neuron. Before that, let us look at a basic plan of a neuron. A neuron is made up of several parts that are designated for various functions. If you look at our diagram here, this is a type of a neuron, though we are going to use it as a basic plan of a neuron. So you can see that we have the part that is called receptor dendrites. That means that that's the part that receives the stimulus. We have the receptor dendrites. Then we have another part called the myelin sheath. We have the axon, which is filled with a fluid called the exoplasm. That is the fluid that is found inside the axon, is what we are calling the exoplasm. And it's through that fluid that an impulse is transmitted. We have another part that is called the Schwann cell. There's a cell there, what we are calling the Schwann cell. Then if you look at it again along a length of the neuron, we have constrictions. These constrictions, when it is one, we call it node of Ranvier. Node of Ranvier. And the main function of the node of Ranvier is to ensure that the speed of the impulse is enhanced. We also have another membrane that is covering the axon, a very thin membrane. That membrane is called neurilema, the neurilema. So each and every part here has got a function that is designated for it. Then at the end of it, where we are now seeing, this is the part we are calling the CNS, the entire terminal dendrites. That means that it's like the terminus where the impulse reaches. So it is found in the central nervous system. So we call this part the terminal dendrites. So the movement of an impulse can be shown by an arrow. That means that it starts from the receptor dendrites to the central nervous system. So that is a basic plan of a neuron. Let us now go back to our types of neurons so that we see what is a sensory neuron. How do we identify that maybe this is a sensory neuron, this is a motor neuron, and a relay neuron? Sensory neuron is a type of neuron. We look at the types of neurons depending on the position of the cell body. Look at what we call the cell body. We are looking at the type of neuron depending on the position of the cell body. So, for example, in a sensory neuron, the cell body is said to be off the axon. So it is off the axon. It is not within the axon. So if you look at it there, then any neuron that is having its cell body off the axon, then we say it is a sensory neuron. What is the function of a sensory neuron? The function of a sensory neuron is to transmit an impulse, where in this case an impulse is an electric charge or a wave of disturbance that is arising from the difference in the concentration of ionic balance across the membrane. So the two ions are there, sodium ions and potassium ions. The difference in the concentration will constitute an impulse. When we come to a motor neuron, the motor neuron, we have its cell body. If you are looking at it, the cell body of a motor neuron is within, not within, that is a relay neuron. So the sensory neuron, the motor neuron has got the cell body at one end. So this is the cell body at one end. So this is motor neuron. When we come to the relay neuron, the cell body is within. So you can now see that we want to look at, I told you that the type of neuron is going to be determined by the position of the cell body. I said that sensory neuron has got its cell body situated off the axon. We also have a motor neuron where the cell body is at one end of the axon. Then when we come to the relay neuron has got its cell body occurring within. You can see that it is within the axon. So that is how we identify this. Neurons are also described as either being unipolar, bipolar, or multipolar. When I talk about uni, means that one or solitary. When I talk about bipolar, bi means two, then multi here means many. What do I mean by this? When I talk about the neurons are being described depending on the whether it is a unipolar, a bipolar, and a multipolar. So this one is going to depend on how many dendrites originate from the cell body. Let us take, for example, the cell body of a sensory neuron. So you can see very well that this cell body here, the axon itself is just a modified dendrite. So we can now see that a sensory neuron is unipolar because it only has one dendrite that is originating from the cell body. So that's why we call it a unipolar, because it is having only one dendrite originating from the cell body. So we call it unipolar. When we come to the motor neuron, a motor neuron, if we look at the main axon here, which is just a modified dendrite, it is originating from the cell body. We have other more dendrites coming from the same cell body. So because it is having more, we call it multipolar. It is a multipolar neuron, depending on the many number of dendrites that originate from the cell body. When we are coming to the relay neuron has got two. It is, we said that this cell body here has got one dendrite here, another dendrite here. That therefore means that there are only two originating from the cell body. Therefore, we call it a bipolar neuron. So, if you look at now the function of these neurons, then we are going to say that motor neuron takes the information from the central nervous system to the effector organs, while a relay neuron will relay the information between the sensory and motor neuron. So that is a basic plan of a neuron and how they function depending on whether they are multipolar or unipolar. So that is our lesson of today, and I want to thank you very much for listening to this lesson.